Battleground, New York City, the fight for your vote. Your front row seat to the battle for New York's next mayor. It's the old guard clinging to power, chasing a candidate they never saw coming. Every night, our experts break it down.
What New Yorkers want above all else is authenticity.
He's been more visible in the Hamptons this summer than he has been on the streets of New York City.
We're listening to the people who matter most, you, the voters.
He is the shining star. He's working very hard. And I think he would work hard for the city, too.
And when the candidates sit across from us, nothing's off the table. What's your plan to make New York City feel like a safer city?
S.E. Cup, that's your perception. Of course, there's a lot of crime.
So what's happening right now? Let's dive in.
Welcome to Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. I'm John Avlon, in for S.E. Cup. And if you look at the calendar, today is Friday, September 5th. That means it is exactly 2 months until Election Day, the critical New York City mayor's race being watched not only here in New York City, but also across New York State and across the nation. We got it all covered for you. And later, we're going to be talking to an expert in millennial voters to help break down the generational divide that's driving so much of our politics. But first, we're going to switch things up and begin with the bigger picture. Joining me today is J.C. Polanco. He's an attorney, an assistant professor at University of Mount St. Vincent. J.C., thanks for joining us again on Battleground NYC.
So good to see you, John. How are you?
I'm good, man. Listen, we got a lot to get to. There have been rumors galore, backed by a lot of reporting about whether Mayor Adams might take a job and leave the race or stay in. New York Times reporting that he had been floated for the ambassador to Saudi Arabia position. Obviously, there's a lot of strum and drang around all of this. The Adams team putting out a comment saying that he will always listen if called to serve our country. No formal offers have been made. I'm still running for re-election, and my full focus is on the safety and quality of life for every New Yorker. That is what's known as a non-denial denial. Now, we may find out more in the coming hours, but JC, what are you hearing?
Listen, I'm hearing that this mayor is going to stay in the race. I think that a lot of us were hoping that he would take an ambassadorship. A lot of us were hoping he would take an internship somewhere, John, just disappear from this race so that it could be mano a mano in November. And it looks as if it may not happen, and it was a lot of wishful thinking. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that no matter what poll you're looking at, John, it just, the math ain't mathing. Assemblyman Mamdani looks as if he doesn't have a majority of New York supporting him. I know you don't need a majority. I know. But when you see that in every given hypothetical, former Governor Cuomo is winning mano a mano, a lot of those folks that don't like socialism or whatever communist light plan Assemblyman Mamdani's offering, were hopeful that something would happen. There were some risks there, John, and you know it.
Well, putting aside all that, just you feel that even though the incumbent mayor of New York can't get above 10%, that all this reporting about the Trump team trying to offer him an exit ramp, that's all you're hearing, that's going nowhere fast. And that's pretty
significant. My sources are telling me that's the case. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that if the president were to appoint him to something like the jobs that we're hearing, it's going to require approval, which means there has to be a background check. What senator is going to put their name on the line to vote yes on this before the midterms? I don't know. And it feels as if it's another quid pro quo. So I can see why there was some hesitation.
There's a lot of that going on. I want to make sure we're hitting a lot of different topics. Billionaire Bill Ackman, who had backed Andrew Cuomo during the election, and then switched to Adams after Cuomo's defeat in the primary, now switching back, putting out a tweet saying it's time for Adams to go. Ackman doesn't have the power to determine who stays in and goes out. He does have a lot of cash that could put in independent expenditures. What's your read on that?
I think my read is clear. A lot of the folks that are supporting Mayor Adams are looking at the poll numbers and may see that the only way to stop a certain Mayor Mamdani victory in November is to rally around former Governor Cuomo. I think that's what they're seeing now. Quite frankly, I think the sleeper here continues to be Curtis Lee. I think Curtis Lee was going to do well if there are three people in this race. Unfortunately, I still see Assemblyman Mamdani winning this seat if the opposition continues to be divided. Now, the support that former Governor Cuomo is going to get from Wall Street is going to be important for funding. Former governor is going to need funding to tell his story. So Ackerman is important moving forward.
All right. Well, I want to talk about the assembly. Obviously, that's where Zohran Mamdani has been working, but there's been a lot of attention on the fact the governor, the senators, the head of the Democratic Party in the House of Representatives have not endorsed the Democratic nominee, but less attention given to the fact that the Speaker of the Assembly, Mamdani's erstwhile boss, Carl Hastie, has not endorsed him either. What do you make of that?
The Speaker, a Bronxite like me, he's very smart. He understands that a Mayor Mamdani will be disastrous for the Democrats nationally, in purple districts and in purple states. I am telling you now, I was in the Republican Party for over 21 years, and I know what we'd be doing with a Mayor Mamdani as we make those commercials and do those mail pieces. It's going to be an albatross around the neck of every purple district, purple state Democrat. So if you are a major Democratic leader, the last thing you want is for there to be a socialist mayor out of New York City with some of the videos. I mean, this is something I think that the New York City press is giving him a pass on. Those videos are out there where he talks about decommodifying housing, defunding the police, telling us that our DAs are responsible for violent crime. And then going as far as seizing the means of production. Look, there's no Spanish way of saying that. There's no English way of saying that. It's universal. This is communism light. And I think that the Democratic leaders of the state party and the national party know this.
As someone who's not a fan of communism at all and recognizes the death toll, I do think we need to distinguish between democratic socialism and communism. But I hear what you're saying.
I do the same, John. I understand the difference, but I am saying that those.
Of course,
when you say seizing the methods of production, that's Marxist light. Is what I'm saying.
All right, fair enough. Look, but I want to talk about, one place where Mamdani is cleaning up is in low dollar donors. I mean, if you compare his low dollar donors to every other candidate, it's striking. And in fact, he just hit his $8 million mark in small donors. I want to show you a clip of an ad he's running, and then get your reaction to that kind of grassroots support he seems to have.
Well, folks, you've done it again. We can't take any more of your money. Truly, you need to stop. Thanks to you, we've raised the maximum amount of money we can spend in this race, $8 million. And you've done it with more than 2 months to go until the election. So that means we got it in the bag, right? Wrong. You think Bill Ackman's gonna sit back and let us walk into City Hall? No! He's gonna write a very long tweet and then cut an even bigger check to one of our opponents. So get ready to see a lot more scary videos of this face on your TV. But just like we did in June, this movement can overcome their money in November. So we are once again asking, not for your dollars, but your time. Sign up to Canvas or Phone Bank at ZohranForNYC.com/events. Make it a weekly shift. And above all, do not send us any more money.
So, look, putting aside the fact he is a very charismatic candidate who knows how to use social media well, I mean, that success is a measure of support, like it or not.
Oh, my goodness. I have never seen anyone this good, John. John, that video was great. He does it with everything. He's so charismatic, and he knows how to use the social media. His director mom taught him how to use that camera well. And the kind of support he's getting is just incredible. There is Mamdani mania. There's a cult of Mamdani that's hit the city. I see it with my students. I mean, there is a craze going on. And it's evident in the kind of donations he's getting. Who tells people don't send me any more money? It's just remarkable. So, yeah.
Right. No, I've never heard that one before. He's also challenged Donald Trump to a debate. Pretty savvy move in terms of gaining headlines. It's obviously got 0% of actually happening, but I wonder what you make of the political theater.
It's a great political theater and something that he knows the New York City press is going to love, because all we've been talking about today is Mamdani's challenge to the president, right? So it's funny, it's cute, but I think the debate should be between the candidates that he has to face off against for November.
No question.
Have it here with John Avlon and Esty Cup.
There you go. I want to switch gears slightly because one of the major themes of his campaign and the city right now is affordability, how to deal with the affordability crisis, lower the cost of housing. Now, Mayor Adams convened an independent charter revision commission that put forward a series of proposals on how to lower the cost of housing. And the city council is trying to get it taken off the ballot by appealing to the Board of Elections, not wanting to give the people of New York a chance to vote on that proposal. This is such a head smacker to me, given the fact that its entire purpose is to build more housing, but the council wants to hold on to all their local prerogatives. This seems like such bad politics. terrible policy. Tell me where
I was
I'm wrong.
president of the Board of Elections. I was commissioner from the Bronx on the board. I have never had an opportunity where we can take something off the ballot that was part of the Charter Revision Commission. I don't know the legality. I don't know if it could happen. But you're right. Look, it is a head smacker. And the reason is NIMBY, not in my backyard. Everybody wants hundreds of thousands of affordable housing. But when you tell them you're going to put it across the street, no, please, no, that's not what I meant. That's what you're seeing now. City council members don't want it. They're concerned about what happens to the fabric in their communities. How is it going to change their neighborhood, their culture?
You know what?
And they'll say something along the lines of, it's too favorable to developers. Wink, wink. It's just not a good idea for their neighborhoods. And the neighbors don't want more people parking in their streets. Many of these communities don't have that kind of infrastructure. So that's why they're trying to figure any maneuver to not put it on the ballot.
Yeah, but isn't it also, JC, a little bit about that the city council feels like their individual power to hold up development might be getting stopped, and it's got a little bit of their own ego and importance as well as NIMBYism?
Yes, I think it's a combination. You're absolutely right. And we're going to see, if there is a Mayor Mamdani, you're going to see an invigorated city council proclaiming all the powers that were stripped of them by Mayor Adams in the last 4 years. So absolutely on that one.
All right. Before we go, I want to talk about Jerry Nadler stepping down. He's been in office since I was a freshman in college. There's a rush to run. We've got Assemblyman Michael Asher running. Nadler has said he definitely doesn't want JFK's grandson to run, offering a smackdown there. What do you see in this race? First time we've had really an open seat, or Nadler stepping down, an open seat in 30 years. Is it a case for more members of the delegation should do what Jerry Nadler did? Open the door to generational change, or should we just get term limits?
I think you've been writing about that for a long time, John. I've been reading your writing. Absolutely. It may be time for term limits, but you don't tell the audience that you were just a 4-year-old when you went to college. Let's keep that. But look, this is the thriller in Manila, the mother of all successions. Who is going to represent that seat? I know every seat is supposed to be the same in Congress, but there's just some sexy seats, and this is one of them in Manhattan. Who's going to be the next congressman out of here? The word on the street is Michael Asher has it in the bag. I know you have a young guy who is who announced a primary against Jerry Nadler, but he's 26. 26 years old. I got to tell you, this is one of those sophisticated seats. They're going to want to ask, what experience do you have to represent me in Washington? And he may not have it, but Michael Asher does.
Even in the era of Mamdani, JC, we'll see.
I don't know, but
even in the era of
I don't know,
Mamdani, we'll see.
I was totally off. I thought that people would ask more about experience. I guess you're right on that, John.
Thank you, JC Polanco. Now stick around, because up next on Battleground NYC, we're going to talk to an expert in millennial voters to help break down the generational divide that's driving so much of our politics today. Stick around. And we're back with Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. I'm John Avlon, in for SE Cup. We're going to talk right now to David Burstein. He's an expert on millennial voters, and certainly that's where a lot of the energy in the election is that Zoran Mamdani has been able to tap into to an unprecedented degree. David, I don't have to tell you that one of the cynical truisms in politics is that young people don't vote. But Zoran Mamdani really turned that on its head. Unbelievable volunteer effort, unbelievable registration effort that helped him topple a former governor in that Democratic primary. Is there something specific about Mamdani's techniques, in addition to the fact that he is a millennial, that's helping him connect that other candidates can learn from?
Yeah, well, I think there is, John. I mean, he has a level of authenticity and a clarity of message, which turns out to be an actually rare combination in American politics these days. If you are Andrew Cuomo, who is currently, trying to put as many videos as he can on Instagram of him walking around, New York City. I think there was one this weekend of him riding the cyclone at Coney Island. Always a good time, but it all does smack a little bit of desperation. It's just not authentic. Zoran Mamdani is a digital native. He is using Instagram. He's using video communication in the way that his peers are, and it shines through.
David, there's no question the Democrats have a generational divide that they're working their way through. Interesting piece out in Axios today with Hakeem Jeffries saying that this should sort of be done in time, work itself out. But there are a lot of folks who are rattling the cages saying, no, we got to have generational change. I want to ask you about this. Is that, from your educated perspective, a matter of experience? Is it a matter of authenticity and new medium, or is it a matter of ideology? Because Bernie Sanders is 80-something, and he's real popular with millennials. So that makes me think that maybe it's about ideology for a lot of folks.
I think you're right, John, because it's a little bit more nuanced than just let's throw everyone who's over XYZ age out. There are obviously, and we've seen it, people who are older who can do the job, and people who are younger who can't do the job, and vice versa. So it's really about, do you actually have the ability to look ahead, to look at the future? Can you embrace younger leaders? Can you work alongside those younger leaders? But there is a separate point that we do have what is called, people might not be familiar with this word, but I certainly am as a student of this, a gerontocracy, which means a government by the old. And I was actually just talking to someone earlier today, a number of years ago when I was beginning my activist career, a bunch of my friends and I would put together a deck of all the ages of the members of Congress, and we thought Nancy Pelosi was too old then, and it took her another 10 years to step down. So, but it really isn't just about age, John. I think, as you point out, it's about, can you meet this moment? And I think that is part of the criticism of Nadler too. The difference between Nadler and Bernie Sanders. Nadler, people felt, is he really the person who is going to fight against Trump? Is he really leading the charge? That's why he lost his judiciary post. But I don't think people have that fear.
Well, that's not arguably not he lost his judiciary post, right? I mean, Jerry Nadler was a member of the DSA back in the 1980s. So that's not about ideology. That's about maybe he wasn't as effective and vibrant in office as DSA. Okay, well, we're going to get really into the internecine debates between branches of Democratic Socialists, but I want to really push that point, though, because there was a poll earlier in this election showing that Cuomo is leading with voters over 55. Now, the simple way to say is, there's a huge gap when it comes to generations. The other way to see it is, folks over 55 remember a city where there was a fiscal crisis. They remember a city where we were averaging over 2,000 murders a year, and they think that maybe experience matters. I mean, literally any executive experience. So do you think that's a legitimate critique, or is it all about ideology and generational change, which is desperately needed, but maybe not for its own sake?
No, I mean, generational change is desperately needed. And I think in this city, people who are older have a different experience. I think you're right. But I also think that there's cross-age support. I mean, there are definitely a lot of people who are over the age of 55 who are supporting Mamdani, who feel like, it's time for a new way of thinking. And then those were some of the people who were very supportive of Barack Obama early on, if you recall, as well as younger voters, obviously, who led him to victory in a big way. So, I always resist the desire to sort of break these things up. So it's all just about old people or young people. It's a little bit more complicated than that in a race like this.
Well, I mean, let me just press you on that briefly in the time we have in this segment. We're going to talk to you on the other side. We are talking about old people versus young people, though. It is about generational change. Yes, there's nuances, but I mean, ultimately, you're an expert in millennials. You're talking about the differences between generations.
Yeah, well, I think the young people are the people who are bringing Mamdani to power and who we will have to thank. The question is, what will he deliver for young people, and how will they feel about those results?
That is the big question. All right, David, stick around. We're going to get to you when Battleground NYC comes back right after this break. And we're back with Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. I'm John Avlon, in for SE Cup, and we're back with David Burstein, the author of Fast Future, how the Millennial Generation is shaping our world. David, look, all stereotypes break down on closer inspection, right? We're dealing with generalities because of the inherent diversity of every community and every generation. One of the interesting counterweights is that Donald Trump, who's deeply unpopular in New York, and yet a child of New York, Queens in particular, saw his biggest per capita gains in the country in New York and New Jersey, right? Younger generations in New York City, disproportionately communities of color, but Andrew Cuomo won the Bronx. And when you look at young voters, you saw, particularly in the 2024 election, a huge gender gap within the youngest voters, within millennials and younger, where young men seem to be getting more conservative. How do you understand those trends, both how it applies to the Mamdani election, but how Democrats can help heal that gender divide that they're on the wrong side of with regard to young men?
Yeah, no, it's a great question because there's two things. There's what's happening with communities of color and young people, and what's happening with men. And I think they're related, but they're two different things. So just quickly to speak to the point about what's going on the younger voters in the communities of color. I think for a long time, Democratic politicians have taken those candidates for granted. They've overpromised and underdelivered, and Trump, was actually willing to go and talk to those voters just a little bit and be able to go to those people with not a very compelling pitch, but those votes were not nearly courted in places like New York and New Jersey. In the ways that maybe they were courted in Georgia, for instance, right, where those gains were not as pronounced. There's a particular phenomenon in these places and parts of the country where minorities have been underserved routinely by Democratic politicians. They've been promised affordable housing. They've been promised affordability. They've been, again and again and again, they've been promised better education systems, and they've lived through multiple Democratic administrations of that not happening. And also, the data on crime, which is, as most people probably know, or maybe actually don't know, that crime has actually gotten better, historically, mostly year over year. But in terms of polling, every time you ask people about crime, they always say they think it's getting worse. And so in a place like New York, I think those kind of trends and phenomenon, Donald Trump was really able to play into those. As it relates to men, separately and differently, young men, they are becoming more conservative. There's no doubt about that.
Why?
It's partly because of, I think, the issues that Trump really tapped into. It's why you saw these questions about DEI, being part of, his first actions as president. Why he's continued to play on those so heavily, because young men, or I should say a certain subsection of young men, but a not insignificant one, believe that they have been put down as the lowest, group of people on the totem pole. And that is a message that has been pounded by Trump, by podcasters like Theo Von, like Joe Rogan, who are increasingly becoming one of the primary sources of information, for these people. I mean, these numbers, for a lot of people watching, I don't know if people quite understand the audience and the impression that these media sources are having on these young men, who are basically being made to feel like the only way out for them are people like Donald Trump and his MAGA movement. It has been a cultural infiltration. It's not just a political movement. And I think that's something that people need to start understanding if they want to understand how to defeat these people. It's not simply a question of offering them, token policy prescriptions. They are being enveloped by a cultural movement that is much more connected to what they see, and it's based on grievances, really.
Based on grievances, you say. Now, do you think Zohran Mamdani can help connect with young men of the millennial generation and younger, given that he is one, or is it more about grievance politics as you see it? And Zohran Mamdani may have the exact opposite.
Yeah, well, I think he is also tapping into things that activate people, but he's tapping into a different subset of people who don't have to worry about their basic realities, right? Mamdani won young people in Hudson Yards in the West Village, full of young finance bros in New York City who, don't have to worry about living paycheck to paycheck, and they're free to say, sure, sounds good. But I think those people are also ready for generational change. Is a big part of why those people went in that way. And they're frustrated with how everything has gone in this city.
On the flip side, because crime is down, and why do you think Cuomo, Mamdani won in you say these finance bro areas, but Cuomo won the Bronx? How do you make sense of that?
He's got a long-standing relationship, and his family has a long-standing relationship with, I think, those communities, and those were communities that he connected with as governor. And he's an old-school politician, and those, he knows how to get votes out of places like the Bronx as a result of that. I don't think it should be necessarily read to believe that people actually think he's going to deliver, for those communities in a real way, or that he would if he was mayor.
It's a fascinating time in our city's history. And David, to get your analysis of the youth vote and how Mamdani is tapping into, it's fascinating. I'll say at the end of the day, I don't care what generation you are, it's always about, on some level, quality of life, cost of living, and whether we have an expensive, vibrant economy. David Burstein, thank you very much for joining us on Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. We'll be back on Monday with SE Cup. A lot of news in this mayor's race. Stay with it.